I'd like to talk about a recent public opinion survey that was conducted among Palestinians and Israelis, and then open it up and talk a little bit more about what Palestinians want. It's, if one reads our most recent survey, one would be amazed by the extent to which Palestinians and Israelis agree on things. They agree on a two-state solution. They agree that they both oppose a one-state solution. They agree that settlements are making the two-state solution impractical. They agree that a Palestinian state will not be established in the next 5 years. They agree that negotiations are not about to resume anytime soon. Where they disagree is what to do from here. Palestinians say, we will not sit at the table before Israel agrees to free settlement construction and accept terms of reference alongside the 67 borders. It is the first time in a very, very long time that Palestinians have imposed preconditions for negotiations. Palestinians do not actually call them preconditions. To the contrary, they think settlements are the preconditions, not the freezing of the settlements. In the past, throughout the 90s and throughout most years of the Intifada, Palestinians supported negotiations, period. They were never opposed to sitting at the table. They now oppose negotiations. Why? They have developed a sense of where Israel is heading, and they don't like it. They think Israel, in fact, an overwhelming majority of the Palestinians, think that Israel's long-term goals are to annex all of the areas, West Bank, Gaza, and either expel the population or deny them their political rights. They are extremely worried. 75% of the Palestinians are worried that they will be hurt by the Israeli army or Israelis, that their land will be confiscated, that their homes will be demolished, that their movement will be restricted. These conditions are making Palestinians losing hope that negotiations is the answer. What they support instead is diplomatic warfare. Palestinians support going to ICC, even if that, in fact, more than 70%, the survey shows, support going to the International Criminal Court in order to stop settlement expansion, even if that means imposition of financial sanctions and the collapse of the Palestinian Authority. They do not want, a majority does not want to see the Palestinian Authority collapsing. But if in the process of waging a diplomatic warfare against Israel, the Palestinian Authority is to collapse, most Palestinians say yes, we can live with that. Now, this, of course, is the general picture of the Palestinian, where Palestinians are heading and what they want now. If we look carefully, we can find that there are three segments of Palestinian society today. There is the generation of my son. These are the youths who have been empowered by the Arab Spring. For them, this Arab Spring youth is still a small minority. They're probably less than 10% of the population, but they are gaining momentum. They view themselves as nationalists, but have more of a global, they differ from me. My son does not share my own understanding of what a Palestinian identity is all about. His identity is more global. He's still a nationalist, but his identity is global. He therefore sees no problem in a binational state. He sees no problem in one state for both Israelis and Palestinians. They are secularists, and when they look at my generation and the generation of current Islamist leaders, they see failures to deliver Palestinian rights. That's what their goal is, not a two-state. Their goal is not a one-state. Their goal is political rights. In any formulation, rights can be granted or achieved. They will support it. Then there are the Islamists. The Islamists are much larger, but they are also not a majority. Probably somewhere between 20 to 25% of the public. This is the core support of the Islamists. The Islamist view is one Islamic state. However, in all of historic Palestine, Islamists do want a temporary arrangement. They can live with a temporary arrangement for a long time. Their outlook is nationalist, but it's again different from my own understanding of what a national identity is. Their understanding is affected by their religious beliefs as well. So their national identity is affected by Islamist ideology. They are not secularists by any means, and this therefore affects the extent to which they can find public support. Then there is the majority of the Palestinians. This is more or less 2/3 of the Palestinian public. This is the mainstream, mostly nationalists, tend to be mostly secularists, but many of them are also traditionalists who accept a certain role for religion in politics. This last group defines its vital goals in any agreement with the State of Israel based on five things. A sovereign, independent Palestinian state on the 1967 boundaries, with East Jerusalem as a capital, with Palestinian sovereignty over Muslim holy places, and with Israel recognizing the principle of the right of return. These are the 5 vital goals of this mainstream nationalist. In order to get these 5 goals, Palestinian nationalists, the mainstream nationalists, are willing to make 6 to 7 compromises. I'll come to the 7th in a minute. The 6 compromises are the following. The Palestinian state is a state that lives in security and cooperation with the State of Israel. There will be no major weapon systems. Palestinians do not want to spend money on building a big army. They are willing to accept limited territorial swap in order to help Israel deal with the issue of settlements. They are very flexible in the modalities of return. Most believe that the return will be to the Palestinian state, despite the fact that they insist on the principle of the right of return. They concede Jewish sovereignty over Jewish holy places in Jerusalem. Even this, of course, creates some question as to what is a Muslim holy place and what is a Jewish holy place. For most mainstream Palestinians, the wall, the Western Wall, is certainly a place that can, as well as the Jewish quarter of the old city, can be seen as having religious meaning and can be annexed. They fully support end of conflict. In all surveys during the last 10 years, since the Clinton parameters and the Geneva Initiative, Palestinians have supported end of conflict. A majority of Palestinians have always supported end of conflict. The 1/7 issue that is problematic for Palestinians, not always, but certainly today, is the recognition of the Jewish nature of the state. Most Palestinians object to this because they view it as a license, a Palestinian license to Israel to discriminate against Israeli Arabs. If and when this issue, the issue of discrimination against Israeli Arabs, is addressed in any peace negotiations, or if Israel finds a way for this issue to disappear, most Palestinians will have no problem in recognizing the Jewish character of the state. Issues related to refugees and holy places are not, the compromises related to these issues are not very popular. Most Palestinians, in fact, we have never found a majority of Palestinians, or for that matter, for Israelis, during the past 10 to 15 years, in favor of any identical compromise on holy places, Jerusalem, or refugees. However, packages that contained these compromises, along with other issues, have found a majority of Israelis and Palestinians supporting them. No, not all the time, but in several occasions during the past 10 to 15 years, we've found a majority in favor of those. The reason that people support a package, of course, is the trade-offs that they make between the gains. For the Palestinians, the major gain, of course, is independent statehood along the lines of 1967. In return for that, they are willing to accept these compromises. We found that Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza share these views. We do not find significant differences. we find that in terms of the political spectrum, this is something that is shared by the supporters, the voters of Fatah, the mainstream nationalist force, as well as third parties, those who tell us in our surveys that they are not sure to whom they will vote. The only group that does not have a majority support for the compromises I mentioned are the Islamists, those who will say they will vote for Hamas in the next elections. Now, in terms of the size of this group, in our most recent survey, the size of this group has been 30%. Again, that doesn't mean that all of them oppose the compromises, but a majority of those does oppose those compromises. The drivers of attitudes, what makes some Palestinians more willing to compromise than others? I go back to what I started with. The same reasons that makes Palestinians today losing hope in negotiations, in any negotiations with Israel, are the same drivers. The concern, the threat perception, the worry that I will be hurt, my home demolished, etc. This is an extremely important factor. Those who say they are very threatened or very worried tend to be less willing to compromise. Those who say they're not worried tend to be more willing to compromise. The second is about perception of Israel's goals. Those who define Israel's ultimate goals in terms that are related more to Israel's security rather than to actual annexation of the land tend to be a lot more willing to compromise. Those who are those who are optimistic about the future tend to be more willing to compromise than those who are not. When Palestinians are optimistic, when surveys are conducted, at times when Palestinians are optimistic, they tend to show more willingness to compromise among the public. So during the last 3-4 years, for example, the best time for compromise was when the Palestinians just returned from the UN in December 2011. After the Palestinians requested membership in the UN, that feeling that Palestinians have achieved something, as little as it was, gave some of the public hopes and optimism about the future, and almost automatically increased the level of support. This seems, therefore, these are the three drivers that affect, all of them, in fact, are psychological. The threat perception, the perception that the others do not want, the other, in this case, Israel, does not want compromise, and the feeling that tomorrow is going to bring good things. When these three are changed, we will find much greater public support for compromise. Thank you.